I have a question for everybody. Who here thinks that blogs are killing the newspaper business? Anybody? Yeah, a few hands are standing up. Well, it's been the general consensus over the last decade, but this next speaker has embraced WordPress to save the newspaper industry. I went to 4 WordCamps last year. I saw Joe speak twice. You're gonna love this. Joe Boydston of Northern California, he's the vice president of McNaughton Newspaper Group, operator of 8 Northern California newspapers. His printed newspapers are powered by WordPress, not just the websites. If Joe's talk doesn't energize you to take your business or industry to the next level, I do not know what will. Please welcome Joe Boydston.
Hi everybody, thanks for coming. This is my 3rd time, I think, at WordCamp Reno, and my 2nd time speaking here. I was here last year as well. So last year kicked off a 9 WordCamp tour for me. I went around speaking at WordCamps, telling my story. And a funny thing happened during the very WordCamp after Reno was Portland. And I got to the airport well after midnight. So I'd missed the rental car companies, I'd missed the train thing that goes downtown. But funny thing is, I'd been listening to this audiobook on the way to Portland. And it was on this book called Born to Run. I'm not sure if any of you have read that book. It's been around for a while, so maybe you have. So it inspired me to think, I wonder if I could do that. I wonder if I could just run from the airport to downtown. So I did, and I was pleasantly surprised that it wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it would be. I'd never run more than like 4 or 5 miles before, so this was 20. And just blew me away that this was possible. So I kept that going. So through all 9 WordCamps, I'd fly to the airport and I run to the location. And different cities are different distances away from the airport. Some are easier or harder to get out of the airport. Some of them, like Denver, are very hard to get out of the airport. So 340 miles, 9 cities, 1 mission. And believe it or not, I'm going to tie this together. Give me a second. So in the book, Born to Run, it was very inspirational to me. But I picked up on a couple of themes that sounded familiar to me. The book, if you don't know, it's about ultra marathons. This is a 100-mile road race. And it's a study of these ultra athletes to figure out how is it possible that a human being can run 4 marathons consecutively without stopping or without days in between. Very fascinating book. What I picked up on during reading this book was 2 things. The first one was questioning of the status quo, questioning what normal is, because these people definitely do not think the same way the traditional athlete thinks. So just question what is. That was important for me in my industry, and I'm going to give you some examples in a minute. The second theme was they seem to know intrinsically, just in their being, that humans have much more capacity than we give ourselves credit for. Anyone who's run or worked out before, you've probably experienced the pain we interpret as our limits, right? Our physical limits. We've hit the wall. Like, I ran 4 miles and that was it. I can't go any further. But these people, there's something wired different in their brain maybe or something. But they ask themselves, well, what if I didn't stop at 4 miles? What if I went 5 or 6 or 25 or 50 or 100? What would happen? And I think that's something I see in the news business. Is it's a very defeatist attitude. Like, we're done for. This is the limit. This is as far as we can push the printed newspaper, and we're going to stop there. This is as far as I can run. But what if we push further? If the newspaper is broken, why don't we just fix it and make it better? And that's what my mission is all about here. So I'm going to show you how my goal is for WordPress to save journalism. This is where I work. As he mentioned before, these 5 newspapers are the only newspapers I'm aware of in the country that use WordPress, not just for the website, but also for the printed newspaper. So the printed newspaper is actually designed using a software powered by WordPress. The primary database is WordPress. I don't work at the Bangor Daily News, that's why I grade that out. So it's the last time I'm going to talk about them. I'm just throwing them out there because they're doing some exciting stuff. But the other 4 I can. Those are the papers where I work. I run the operations on a daily basis. So in 2010, we had a computer system, very, very old newspaper computer system. Needed to be replaced, upgraded. The bill was like $100,000 or probably north of that. Fortunately, I was able to convince the family who owned these newspapers to, instead of spending all that money on proprietary software, we'd buy all new Macs for the entire newsroom and install WordPress. And we will build themes and plugins that allow us to do each and every aspect of building the newspaper. So everything we need from a traditional newspaper software vendor, we build out of WordPress. And I'm going to show you some of those today. To put this in context for you, here's the scale that we're running our WordPress newspaper websites at. It's a network of sites. I think four newspapers, so there's 4 newspapers plus a couple of verticals, which generate 500,000 visitors per month. These are monthly numbers. 2.5 million page views. A lot of people can talk to you about how to scale WordPress, and they usually mean, what does it mean when I get lots of traffic to my website? We have a different problem. We get lots of traffic, but our problem is scaling the back end of WordPress. How can we handle 100,000, or now it's 150,000 now posts in our database? How do we handle, it's going to be 100,000 comments soon, and 15,000 users. Every subscriber to our newspaper is now a WordPress user and has the ability to write stories, letters, post classified ads, and whatnot. But we do handle the public side quite well as well. Also, this is the UC Davis community newspaper in the town of Davis, home of the infamous pepper spraying incident. You guys probably remember that. So 500,000 visitors per day for 3 days in a row. And this is a homegrown WordPress site, and the server handled it flawlessly. So don't ever worry about WordPress not being able to handle the traffic if you have it set up right. I'm going to jump straight into where the magic happens for the newspaper. I'm going to show you 2 plugins that make everything else is built on these 2 concepts. The first one is called the print tags. You look here, it's a standard WordPress admin, right? Post editor, someone's writing a story. But on the top right, you see the results of this plugin we've created called print tags. This allows the newspaper, or the writer or the editor, while they're creating the content, to also designate a page and a date for that content. Doesn't sound very exciting, but that's going to be very relevant in a minute. We need to know not just when the story was published, but when it's intended to be published in paper, or in print, and on what page. The next plugin is called the Page Planner. The name is pretty self-explanatory. What you see here is lists of stories grouped by page. You see the top left-hand corner that says A1. Let me zoom. So I'm seeing stories grouped by page A1. In the old days, editors would come together in the conference room and they break out their notepads and their pens and they do a story budget and they decide what story is going to go on what page. And they do this every single day. They spend some time in there, half hour to an hour, then they go back out to the newsroom, make some photocopies of the list, pass it out, disseminate it through the newsroom, and start building the newspaper. That process now happens inside WordPress. We can assign stories to a page and visualize the flow of the entire edition from within WordPress. On the far right-hand side, you see just the word export. That's a button that allows the pagination staff, these are people who run Adobe InDesign and actually build the pages, to go here and export either individual stories or an entire page worth of stories to their desktop. So they'll go here and they'll download the stories, the photos, the advertisements, everything for the printed product. Now, by definition, if they're going here to get the content, we've assumed that the content is already finished. And the production process is now much, much faster. So the first benefit to the newspaper, benefiting journalism, of course, is dramatically consolidated workflow. So most newspapers realize about a 2-hour savings per day just by using this workflow within WordPress. And let me show you what did I do there? The result of all this stuff is here. You're familiar with the A section of the newspaper, the B section of the newspaper. This is what we lovingly refer to as, sorry about that, too far, the E section of the newspaper. On the left-hand side, we see a JPEG image of the sports section of one of our newspapers. See, it says Aggie Corner on the left-hand side. That's a story about an athlete. Gets okayed by his doctor, I think. He can play again. On the bottom is an advertisement, a paid advertisement by the university selling tickets for the upcoming game. Now, over the past decade or so, we've done a great job in the publishing business of serving readers. We've given readers more ways than ever to read the story online. So they're quite happy. But the advertisers got the short end of the stick. Our slogan used to be, we deliver your advertisement to half of our audience, half of the time. Not really, that's a joke. But it's true, it's true. When you run an advertisement in the paper, it doesn't show up online at any newspaper pretty much in the country. So it's only half of our audience. If you do sell a banner ad, that's the best we could do, is a banner ad to an advertiser, it rotates. And so at best, your advertisement shows up half of the time. So the advertiser experience was far inferior to what the reader experience was. Our new slogan is we deliver news, information, and advertising. Would you like that in paper or plastic today? So you can see from the image here, that story about UCDN gets okay to play again, we see that story show up on the computer, on the tablet, on the mobile device, and the same advertisement follows it. And this is the magic that's shaping the newspaper of the future. Because we can now deliver an experience to the reader and the advertiser that is consistent. The dream of newspapers in a digital format was that someday we can sell these digital newspapers and we won't have to do the paper thing anymore. That hasn't panned out though, because the advertising does not compute in the digital world. Banner ads is the best we've come up with so far. After 10 years, it's the best we can do. It's terrible looking banner ads that don't work. So one more view of the east section here. Here's a black and white page. I can see even a page with tons of ads on the left-hand side will still convert to a very long newspaper story on the middle. That's a web browser view. We see the same ad stack. So we have a consistent experience. Each section delivers news, information, and advertising, paper or plastic. That's the key to the future of news. Newspapers like to think the original sin was making news free online. That was never the problem. The problem was separating the news from the content. Having news next to an advertisement is a vouch for that brand, that company who's running the advertisement is saying, I have nothing to hide and I support the community, I support journalism. That's what makes that product valuable to them. Here's an example, page A1 on the left. This is the printed copy on the left, and then the website on the right. You can see how, on the right-hand side, a banner ad of that size is worth about $7.50 a day. That's the market rate for banner ads. The ad on the left-hand side, the same red ad at the bottom, that ad's $400 a day in the newspaper. So how do you save newspapers? How do you save journalism? You turn on WordPress and you turn off banner ads. It's as simple as that. Banner ads will never pay for the news. They're just too cheap. Newspapers used to think banner ads are great. We have unlimited inventory. Look how much money we can make. But that inventory, that glut of supply of page views, drove down the value of the advertisement to the point where it can no longer support journalism. So turning off the banner ads and delivering a better product to the advertiser is our future. One more example. Hopefully you guys have seen a newspaper with a sticky note on it. If you're not current print subscribers to a newspaper, you might not have seen this. But newspapers have picked up the tacky habit of selling advertisements on a sticky note and affixing it to the front of the newspaper. They're all the rage these days. It just so happens that these square advertisements that come in the shape of a sticky note happen to be the same dimensions as a traditional square banner ad. So again, we turn off the banner ads and we tell an advertiser says, I really want to run a banner ad on your website. Well, we can do that, but the price is no longer $7 a day. It's $400 a day, and it looks like this. So this is the front page purchase on the newspaper. So WordPress exists to democratize publishing. That's the unofficial motto, I think. Newspapers exist then to monetize it. That sounds bad. It makes it sound like That's all the newspaper is good for, is the money. And that's not what I mean when I say this. What I mean is, when we read something online, we should question the validity of the source, right? Who paid for that information? You know, is this a paid-for advertisement? Is this study that was done? It was an underwriter, a drug company? I mean, how do we know the facts are accurate? And that's where journalists come in. And that's where the newspaper comes in. Because the newspaper is not just making money by sponsoring content on a website. The newspaper is taking responsibility by saying, yes, we received the money and we're going to stand behind this content. If we're wrong, we're going to admit that, and that's equally valuable. So by shouldering the financial responsibility for this transaction, the newspaper and the journalism is ensuring that we have someone to go to for that information. We can feel more confident that that information is accurate. And if it's not, we have nothing to hide. Take a blogger, for example. If you make money on your blog by selling advertisements, you're much less likely to say something bad about someone you think is doing something wrong. Even in social media, like the fellow who spoke before me, you have some social equity in your social circles. If someone's done something that's not ethical, you're not likely to call them out on it for fear of now harming your social reputation in that circle. You know, by saying anything negative, your social influence might shrink. So I say this much to the fear of journalist professors that might come to my talks, but the only difference between a blogger and a journalist, other than there's obviously training going on, but in the eyes of the reader, the only difference, the journalist has financial and legal protection that the blogger doesn't have. A journalist can say whatever they want about an advertiser without fear of reproach. That's in their job. You know, it's part of their job. The fact that we might say something bad about an advertiser is just as valuable. If we say something bad about a politician, they might try and sue us as a journalist. We have umbrella protection under the ownership of the newspaper that a blogger won't have. I don't know a single blogger who wouldn't be scared off by a cease and desist letter, or someone who's got financial backing. A business can afford, or a politician can afford, to spend a lot of money in a legal battle that many of us as independent writers don't have. So that's the primary difference between the two. So I think it's important that we keep journalism alive, because we do need that protection from we need the legal and the financial protection, and we also need someone to point the finger to if we question the validity of that content. Why journalism? This is my motto. This is why I get up every day. This is what keeps me up at night, thinking about these things. We love the freedom of speech. We love our democracy and our community. I think this is not unlike a blogger. I think many of us blog and write for some of the same reasons. Why WordPress? So as a newspaper, why did we choose WordPress instead of any other form of software? And it's you guys. How many of you have helped someone today at WordCamp? How many of you have gotten help from someone else, just another attendee, right? This is the spirit within the newspaper industry is going to survive. We need to help each other to build the tools that are going to bring us into the future. So this is why I talk at WordCamps. This is why I talk at Newspaper Trade Association conferences, to get more newspapers working together on the same code base so we can do more exciting things. I have several other plug-in examples I can show you, or I'm going to open up to questions early. If you guys have some questions, please fire away. While I'm waiting, I'll jump to the next plug-in. Jake? We don't do any ad networks. It's all direct sales. We only sell our edition. So when I mentioned earlier about the super athletes and they dare to question what's normal, to us, normal means you put up a website and you change the news as often as possible, right, to get more people coming back to your site. We dared to question that. We looked at the web server logs and we realized that half of our traffic, they come to the homepage and they don't go anywhere else. They never leave the homepage. They view the homepage as the entire edition of the newspaper. So our sites now only show today's stories. What's in today's paper is what's on today's website. Therefore, every single story is going to have the same ads in it. So what we're selling, Jake, is access to today's audience. If you advertise with our newspaper, we're going to deliver your ad to 50,000 people in the community.
How does web factor into that process? Like your ad salespeople go out and sell the web, they sell the print, say, by the way, you should pay more because you get online too?
Joe, please repeat the question.
The question is, if I understand correctly, do we sell web separately from print?
Yeah, I'm curious about how they actually sell the ads, especially applying to people that may be online only. I mean, does the model work do you think if there's an online only component? Are they, again, sort of sold on the coattails of the print ads, where they say you should pay extra because it's online too?
It goes both ways. Digital is sold on the coattails of print and vice versa. We don't sell one or the other. If an advertiser says, I want an ad in the newspaper, they're going to get the entire edition. They're going to get paper and plastic, really, not paper or plastic. They get the whole thing, the whole kit and caboodle, right? So what we now do is deliver a delivery report for every single edition of the newspaper. And we can say your ad was read by 50,000 people, paper and plastic. So we can now count printed copies plus unduplicated, unique people to the website as an actual reader of the newspaper. So we don't actually sell a banner ad. There's no such thing. If you want to run a banner ad, what you want to buy is a 2-inch by 3-inch ad in the newspaper. That's going to show up on the newspaper in print, and it's also going to show up on that same set of stories for page A5, for example. All the stories on page A5 will also have your ad on it. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
My question is, it sounds like you're redefining newspaper to include not only the print edition, but also the web edition. Could you do that if you had other competition for that audience and they were willing to sell the banner ad for $7 a day?
If it's another newspaper website for $7 a day?
Any website that gets your audience.
I love telling this story. You guys might get this, but I love telling publishers this because it doesn't occur to them. If you look at take a typical newspaper, maybe the circulation is 20,000. They print 20,000 newspapers that day. Go to Quantcast and look up their stats, and they might have 1,000 or 2,000 people a day. They might have 100,000 uniques over the month, but on any given day, they might only have 1,000. So that's a small percentage of their total distribution. So they never should have expected to sell an ad on the web for more than whatever percentage of the total circulation, right? If you deliver 20,000 in print but only 1,000 online, you should only get 5% of the total price. So if it's just a website, we can truly measure their unique users per day, right? How many people are going to see your ad in that day? And actually, the number is actually pretty low. So we put ourselves up against everyone in our market. We don't have any markets with 2 newspapers in it. We do have patch in several of our markets, and it's a non-issue. What I tell newspapers who are scared of patch, you just have another news website in your market going around talking to people about the value of digital advertising. That's a good thing for everyone all around. So it hasn't been a problem. Any other questions? I'm going to jump into a plugin, so we got a few minutes. Here's an example of a newspaper using Twitter to control what shows up on the homepage. So our homepage is responsive. Not responsive like you can drag the window down, which you can do that too. Responsive in that it reflects what the newsroom is doing. So it checks our breaking news Twitter account. If we're tweeting, it changes the homepage. If we're using Storify to storify a story, it changes the homepage to show Storify. That looks something like this. So here's a view of the Daily Republic homepage showing that someone has started tweeting about this story, and it'll start changing the layout of the homepage. So it's actually going into WordPress and changing the default page template to show content reflective of what the newsroom is doing. I'm going to skip over some plugins because I think I'm out of time. You guys can come find me at the break if you'd like. Probably No time for a demo. Since my talk was mostly about advertising, I think I'll stay on that topic. Here's the Mountain Democrat iPhone optimized site. We're not actually responsive, we're adaptive, so we show a child theme based on the device you're on. One of the major advantages of having everything in WordPress, we have the ads in WordPress, we have the schedule for the newspaper in WordPress, we have the content in WordPress. So we know that this story from page A3 had these ads on it. Because those ads are in WordPress, we have some magical code that takes the text out of those ads so that in true responsive form, if I'm on a phone, I tap that ad and I get click to call. Most small businesses, advertisers, when a newspaper shows them this, their jaw hits the floor. So I can say, click here for reservations, and someone reading the newspaper can click on that ad and make the reservation right from their phone without having to go to their website and all that, funny business. So, this technology is like far, far out of the reach of the average newspaper, all thanks to WordPress, because we can build it. This was probably maybe a day worth of development time. So you can imagine, my mission is to get more newspapers to collaborate. Because of just me and like 1 or 2 developers can build this, imagine if we have 20, 30, 100 newspapers all collaborating in open source fashion. Imagine what we could do. Pretty exciting to me.
We can take about 5 more minutes of thank you very much. You got 7 or that on there, of questions. And I do have one question. Can WordPress save the LA Times and the New York Times? Can it scale?
I love that question, and I don't have an answer for it. The newspapers I work at are small. They're small community newspapers. I focus on that because that's my job. I have to. My job is not at the bigger metro papers. I kind of have doubts because they have so many economic issues bigger than simply selling ads and stories. Their business is just vastly complex. My personal thought is that the big papers are either going to find a way financially to make it make sense for them, or they might kind of break up and fragment. And fragments of a metro could certainly survive using a model like this, I believe. Back on the advertising concept, here's the Jetpack dashboard from one of our sites. So these are outbound links in Jetpack, and we're seeing phone numbers in there now. Holy smokes, it's amazing. Sorry, but it gets me excited. It's pretty neat.
I have no idea if it's true or not, but we heard in the presentation previous next door, New York Times and CNN are using WordPress.
For their blogs. As far as I know, it's just for their blogs. CNN, LA Times, Wall Street Journal, most big newspapers will use, and many of them are on WordPress.com, VIP hosted solution, but it's usually for their blogs, not for their main site. And there are quite a few newspapers that use it for their main site, but not for their actual internal database. So every single reporter actually logs into WP Admin to write their stories. Question? Cool. A believer. So how is WordPress changing journalism? My time is up. You can read it.
Joe Boydston.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.